Often maybe when we speak of forgiveness, we go to the cross and we reflect on sacrifice and cost. But the context of this mention of forgiveness in Acts 2:38 is much more to do with the resurrection. The whole thrust of Peter's message, where he's explaining what's taking place at Pentecost, is to do with the resurrection. Follows after the crucifixion. How does the resurrection help us to think about forgiveness? When I was in the early stages of doctoral study, there was a wee book that felt like gold dust that I started to read called Space, Time and Incarnation by Thomas Torrance. There are a few pages in that book which in some way shaped the next few years of my life and study. And I gladly claim a common relation with Tom Torrance back to Robert Torrance in Broomnall Parish Church in Airdrie in 1803 and thereabouts. And I'm delighted that at this point, when I'm thinking of resurrection and forgiveness, that Tom Torrance again comes up with a bit more gold in thinking about this. Tom Torrance also wrote Space, Time and Resurrection, and here in that book he helps me to put words and thoughts together in linking resurrection and forgiveness. Finding a way to frame it, if you like. Torrance draws out the story in Mark's Gospel, chapter 2, where there are 4 friends who lower their 5th friend down through the roof of the building. They break open the roof and lower their friend down so that he can meet with Jesus. Jesus is speaking in the room just below, and you can imagine them breaking open this roof, the mud and the dust, and begins to fall down into the floor below, and people looking up, and the sudden daylight going into that room, and Jesus looking up, and I'm wondering what's taking place. And then Jesus looks at them, looks at the man in front of them, looks at what they're doing for their friend, and he looks at this one who is before him, and he says, "Your sins are forgiven." And there is uproar. How can this man say, "Your sins are forgiven"? And what happens next are the next words that I found helpful in thinking on forgiveness and resurrection. If we're thinking on our own forgiveness in the light of Jesus' resurrection, this wee story opens up a beautiful path. When Jesus says to the man, "Rise up," that same word is what is used of the resurrection. That it means that forgiveness is a healing of all that we are. It is the creative renewing of our whole person into the promise of the resurrection that comes in Jesus. When Jesus says to the man, "Rise up and walk," these are not some sort of additional words of command and healing, but they are the consequences and fuller meaning of what this word and act of forgiveness opens up for the man. To be told your sins are forgiven is not an end point, a sort of full stop of having reached somewhere. It is instead the beginning point of coming into the wholeness of our being human, where God is making us new and drawing us through the gift of the Spirit into the gift of the resurrection life of Jesus. When Jesus says your sins are forgiven, he also says to us, "Rise up and walk." Forgiveness is the starting point of our life in resurrection, where we are renewed and made whole, new, created.